or something. Welcome everybody. Behind the camera is myself, James Davey, co-founder of Precision Golf, and this is our very first Facebook Live broadcast. With us today is Simon Cooper, my business partner, and Matt James, custom fit specialist at Callaway Golf, who will both be showcasing the new Callaway GBB Epic metalwoods. During the presentation, we'll aim to answer as many questions relevant to where we are in the proceedings, but please allow for a slight delay as we are 10 seconds ahead of what you're seeing. I'll acknowledge your questions with a like, and if we need to press on with the presentation, there will be a question and answer session afterwards to ask any other questions. Please do share this video on your device so I can create a bigger live audience as possible. So without further ado, let me hand over to Simon to give a brief introduction of what we do at Precision Golf.
Good evening and welcome to the event tonight. James and I started Precision Golf 12 years ago with the sole reason of fitting and building the best suited equipment to anyone's game. We've got accounts in all the major brands, all the major shaft brands, to give us the best ability to fit the best fitting product, to test all the products you can, and to be as unbiased as possible in the way we put everything together. So it's something that's been a business that's built, and within the industry it's built over the last 15 years or so, to give us the ability to fit the way we do now, with launch monitors, with universal fitting systems where we can interchange all the heads and shafts together. So it's as comprehensive a fitting system as we can offer. Really pleased to have Matt here with us today. So Matt, over to you.
Thank you. So my name is Matt. Welcome to this Facebook Live presentation. And today, as we said, we're going to be talking through our new range of GBB Epic metalwoods. So without further ado, welcome everyone, and hope you enjoyed the presentation that we have for you. So, Epic. Why Epic? Why are we starting with the name Epic? Epic, as a note that you'll see up here, is basically where we believe we are with this product. It's an encompass of all the products that we've had up to date, and really trying to deliver the best product and the most advancing product that we can find for any golfer's game. So with obviously your guys' help here with the fitting process, really trying to improve those games in distances and control, and trying to maximise the enjoyment of players as well. So there's a couple of key features that we want to talk about today in terms of what we're actually trying to do with the new range, and that's certainly a discussion that we'll have. So this is just to show you a few slides that we've created already for the product, just to give it a nice glossy finish and show you guys what it's looking like, if you haven't already seen it, that is. So as you'll see, there's two heads that we are running with for the year, and obviously two heads that the guys will be able to fit bespoke to each player's games. There's probably a head for each player, dependent on what you're trying to explore and trying to gain for a player, and we will discuss those as we move through the presentation. So as you'll see, one of them has a sliding weight on the back and the other has two interchangeable weights forward and backwards. They are slightly different profiles, but we're going to start off with the one with the sliding weight around the back, so what we're calling our standard Epic driver. So the product platform is really looking at encompassing all of the technologies that we've used in the past that you may have heard of. However, there is one new piece of technology that we have developed over a number of years, which we are calling Jailbreak. So what is Jailbreak? I've got a cutaway here of the head that we're seeing. So if you want to zoom in with the camera there, James, so we can see, I'll show you actually internal in the head. I don't know if the camera's picking that up well enough, but you'll see there's two 3-gram titanium bars. I'll just pass that over to you, Simon, so you can hold that and show the viewers while we discuss. Those bars that are in there are really trying to look at stiffening the body to try and maximise ball speeds for players.
I mean, that's something that as a technology's been, it's been a primary focus for the head manufacturers over the years, the structural integrity of the heads.
Absolutely, yeah. So, you know, it's trying to encompass, again, as I said, you know, all the developments and all the advancements that we've had from previous models, and really trying to explore, you know, how we can improve on what we've already got. The guys over in R&D over in Carlsbad have looked at, you know, different structures, different placements of these bars, and really try and understand the correct location, the correct number of bars, even down to the weight. So there's been a serious, you know, vigorous testing process to make sure that those bars are doing what we're going to say they're doing. So what do those bars actually do? So in terms of gains from what a player will see, we're looking at anywhere from 2 to 7 mile an hour ball speed improvements on tour. That's kind of the numbers that we're seeing initially. But what does it do? So as I said, and as I've alluded to, it actually stiffens the vertical stiffness of the body. So anytime a ball actually makes contact with the face, the crown and the sole will want to move away from each other. These rods will support that movement, so essentially they'll connect the crown and the sole and try and inhibit that movement.
Because essentially with that, by connecting the sole and the crown there, as the ball makes contact with the face, what generally happens is they separate upwards, which changes the actual form of the club head. That's an energy loss, that leads to distance loss, that leads to spin inconsistency, so hence the linking the two.
Absolutely. What we've also found through that is it actually makes the face work a little bit harder for us. So the face actually flexes a little bit more, because you're still going to get that impact on the head.
Yep.
You know, there's still going to be an energy in and an energy out, but it's improving the energy out that's really gaining, you know, distances for players. So the benefits of the Jailbreak really for us as key points there are leading to more ball speeds, larger face deflection during impact. We're looking at making the hitting area of the golf club a lot larger. Yeah. So making it more forgiving across the face, improving ball speeds. And as you'll see there, this is obviously where it starts to get a little bit technical. We're actually playing with the rules to the best of our ability in terms of the CT test.
And so just because it's hard enough for those in industry to keep up with the testing, the difference between a COR test and a CT test?
It's a change in the rule and the way that the USGA and the RNA have allowed us to explore the fastness of the face, if you like. The COR test of years gone by looked at the way that the ball was coming off the face. The CT test does exactly that.
Well, the COR was sort of centre of the face primarily, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So the CT test actually looks at the entire face, and an average is taken of all of those hit locations. That average score is then the CT score for the entire head. Yeah. Now those Jailbreak bars are allowing us to push the tolerances of that rule as close as we've ever been.
And by the structure and allowing to do that, would I be correct in saying that because the head's not deforming as much, the whole face is staying more stable, therefore the whole face is giving at the same rate? So rather than having a hot spot in the middle and weak around the outside, because the middle of the face is deflecting, the whole thing's giving more. So it's just a more consistent performance across the whole face.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a really good point. So this is just an image that we have here, and the colours will determine essentially how much the face is moving. So in past and in years gone by, we would actually see quite a lot of movement down here, more so in the crown of the golf club, particularly where crowns have got a lot lighter over the years. Obviously that deflection happens a lot greater when it's a lighter area mass. So this is just to really show you that, you know, those stiffening parts, those Jailbreak technologies are really supporting that impact there. And you can see that the hot spot, that red spot that's in the middle there, I'm not sure if the camera's picking that up, but that's showing, you know, where that energy mass is being focused, and that's right in the middle of the club face.
Rather than it dissipating across the head.
Absolutely. So why is it breakthrough? Obviously we're seeing an increase in the ball speed, as we've alluded to. It conforms with the USGA and RNA rules. If it didn't, we wouldn't be able to produce it. The tour players wouldn't be having it in their bags. It wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't be at market. But we've also currently got in line 11 patents with that. So we will be the only manufacturer using Jailbreak technology.
I think the thing with it from our standpoint, being outside of the manufacturer, is that actually it is, over all the years of clubhead design, you're trying to minimise energy loss and minimise the loss of efficiency on the ball speed, and actually it's been done through, as we'll come on to with the other head materials, trying to stiffen the crown, trying to make sure that the rigidity of the head retains, but actually having something that literally pins the top and the bottom together, that is something totally different. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sat next to Callaway wrap. It is literally never been done before. So
Yeah.
I think you alluded to earlier, we were chatting, you alluded to it being a progression of other technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been an advancement from some of our alpha lines where we've had the gravity core in the head, and that provided vertical stiffness. We, from having conversations with R&D, it's an advancement on that. And as I said, those two bars, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money exploring. Do we have two bars? Do we have one bar? How thick should the bar be? Where should they be in the head? How far away should they be from the face?
Yeah.
To a point where we will test all of those options, and sometimes in often cases actually look at what ones don't perform so that we can explore better the ways in which they do perform. So without doubt those two bars, their location, their weight, everything will be explored to make sure that that's going to do what we're saying it's going to do. This is just a quick screen to show obviously some comparisons against some of our competitors in our own testing. So we're seeing an improvement of 2.3 mile an hour versus PNG and 2.1 over M2. That is obviously previous model of M2. I don't know what the current testing of that is. So there's other technologies that we've had to influence as well to enable us to use Jailbreak. This is something that again has been advanced now for us, and we're going to talk just very briefly about our titanium exo cage. So the cutaway that we had, and I'll show you again, is formed out of one piece of titanium. So those bars that are in there, they're not put in after construction, they're put in during the construction process, they're cast into the head. That allows us to use one piece of titanium to really create that whole mass, which just makes it very, very strong. It provides a very thin, strong structure, again as we've alluded to, but it allows us to really start exploring where we want to place weight in the head. The lighter we can make the construction, the more weight that the guys in the R&D department have to explore to try and place it into positions in the head that are going to be better for golfers. With that, we're also looking at using our proprietary triaxial carbon, which is a carbon braid, which is 30% thinner than what we've had previous. The crown weighs 9.7 grams, which is again a lot lighter than even where we've been in XR 16. So, obviously the influence from previous models where we were making the crown lighter in that, this new technology again is allowing us to do that even more so.
It's kind of like shaft materials have gone over the years, where it's certainly with shafts it's been a case of the thinner you can make the layers, the more you can layer them up, the more different directions you can layer them, which makes them stronger.
Absolutely.
But thinner equals lighter.
Absolutely. Yeah, and anytime we talk about lightness in golf, we're talking about speed.
Yeah.
And anytime we're talking about speed, then we're talking about distance. But for the first time with our triaxial carbon, we're actually starting to use that in the crown of the golf club. So that's the crown part of the golf club, which I'll show you there. The sole of the golf club. All of the weight-saving functionality, as I've alluded to, allows us to really start thinking about the positionings of other weights and other materials in the head. So in comparison to Great Big Bertha, the weight that we'll see that runs through the back on the adjustable perimeter weighting now actually weighs 17 grams as opposed to 10 grams. So you'll see on the track that it's actually over a much shorter space than it was previous. But because it's a heavier weight, it allows us to play around with shot shaping functionality a lot greater without really affecting the MOI of the golf club as well, because it's a lot further back in the head. It allows us to keep that MOI and that CG nice and high. So the CG stays low and back in the head, the MOI stays high. We're looking at present of numbers of about 21 yards of shot correction.
from the extremes.
Yeah. So again, we're looking at all of the functionalities, everything that we can do to really encompass everything into speed and power, because that's what we want from these kind of golf clubs. These are the clubs we're going to be taking off the tee, and the ones that we want to be sending it down the fairway as far as possible. So again, we're looking at can we improve on our aerodynamics of the golf club? We're looking at trying to create more speed.
And with the sort of speed step itself, camera probably won't pick it up, but they are raised. That each part is individually raised up off the crown, so it doesn't actually physically step down. It's picked up off that base layer. So, from the sort of link with the aeronautical companies, likes of Boeing, that would be somewhere where I'm sure they would have a strong influence.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, just in the same way that we have with the titanium bars and in the Jailbreak technology, we've looked at one speed step. We've looked at how far away from the face does it need to be. So again, we're making sure that all of the technologies that we're focusing on really are trying to encompass everything for the player.
Interestingly, between the two, so where it does differ is in the fairway woods there is a single speed step, and on the drivers there are two. So see where the head sizes and the different dynamics of the head, the technology is used across the heads, but in a slightly different way.
Absolutely. Probably a slide there that's not so apparent to yourselves, or so probably used, but obviously from a shelf point of view, there are 4 stock offerings for us, which are premium shafts. They're being proven out on tour as well. So this is just an MOI comparison. So the numbers down the left-hand side are the MOI rating of the golf club, and you can see from there we're looking at really trying to boost those MOI numbers. That MOI is going to lead to forgiveness.
An MOI being moment of inertia, being resistance to twisting and twisting off centre.
Absolutely, yeah. So the sum of all the technologies are we're trying to improve ball speed, we're trying to improve distance, we're looking at more control from the APW, from the adjustable perimeter weight. We can get more draw bias obviously by doing so. We're looking at more forgiveness by increasing that MOI.
There's quite a large percentage over Great Big Bertha actually, looking up to anything into double digits from an improvement point of view is massive, and actually being up 14, that's a big change in that forgiveness aspect.
Absolutely, yeah. So the loft offerings for that head are a 9, a 10, a half, and a 13.5. Obviously these are just the standard technical specs that you'll see, but these guys will help you make your decisions on what model, what head, what loft you should be using. So let's talk briefly about Sub-Zero. So Sub-Zero is obviously a phrase that you guys may be aware of. It was something that was used in XR16 that was pretty much tour-only use, or premium outfitters such as yourselves. And it's really looking at the lower spin model driver. The question that normally gets asked from that is, who's it aimed at? So this year's Sub-Zero is very different to previous Sub-Zeros. This is going to be a marketable club, it's going to be at retail, so it can go into anyone's hands, anyone can try it, anyone can go for it. But we're looking at trying to make our most forgiving low spin driver that we've ever done. So again, we're using our Jailbreak technologies, and I do have another cutaway just to show you that it is in there for those that want to see that. So that's the Sub-Zero head with the Jailbreak technology in there. The difference between this one really is the interchangeable weights, which are forwards and backwards in the head as well. So as opposed to the adjustable perimeter weight of the Epic, we're looking at changing weights forwards and backwards and not around the back of the head. So your Epic is probably a shock correction or a deviation issue, and this one's really focusing on a spin issue.
What's quite nice generally actually is that there's a real progression of technologies used, whereas in the past I think several of the golf manufacturers have had a pretty big criticism for just putting a technology in, claiming it's the next big thing and then dropping it straight away. So it's actually really quite nice to see some continuity in development of the technologies, like the change in the weight at the back, like using that forward, front and back weight change. It's something that in some respects gives a bit more credibility to it from, certainly us from a fitting point of view, because some of the technologies that have been and gone have actually been really good and then dropped. Whereas at least there is that progression on it, and it ultimately lets you learn to fit it better the more and more you use it. So it is good to see it continuing.
Absolutely. So the interesting story with Epic Sub-Zero over to standard Epic is actually in some settings we're seeing some really interesting MOI figures. So you'll see there we've got Epic Sub-Zero in its forward position, and we've got our friends over there at TaylorMade, but even to compare it to Alpha 816, which is was a very low spin driver, but the feedbacks and the comments was in the forward position with the weight, very difficult to use. That was really aimed at your strong golfer. You can see the improvement now. We don't need to go into too much detail. The interesting one there, though, for me certainly as a club fitter as well, and this is something that's going to be very interesting to people for trying, is actually in that back weight position. So the heavier weight towards the back of the head really puts the MOI number up.
It's about 10%.
Yeah.
Or actually maybe just over.
Yeah. And it's higher than any club that we have out at present. So we've got our lowest spin model driver in essentially the most forgiving model as well.
But it is a lot of weight that's moved. I think it's not just sort of 5 or 6 grams. It's I think it's a 3 and a 22.
Yeah, so it's a 2 and a 12 in the driver. Yeah.
Oh, it's the fairway. It's the 3 and the 22. But that's still basically 5% of the head weight.
Absolutely.
So it's quite a considerable amount.
Yeah. And again, we've looked at, you'll see if I show you actually the differences in soles between the standard Epic and the Sub-Zero, how much larger the Sub-Zero version is. Now, because that sole is a lot larger, it allows us to play around with more weight. I don't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's something like 48% of the mass of the Sub-Zero head is made of the triaxial carbon. So again, it's really looking at focusing where we can locate CGs, how we can play around with those CG locations to optimize launch and spin. How are we doing on questions there, James? Any questions coming through?
Keep going, guys. Keep going. Save the best on last.
I think it's part of, again, as products get developed from a fitting point of view, the one thing we all want is versatility. And actually, with the hosel system that Callaway use, with the forward back weight, with the sliding weight at the back, you have a lot of options that can work. And we've already done some fittings with them today, and you really can dial it in pretty well. So it's not going to it's not going to have the same effect. Each change will have a different effect depending on the player, but it's a very versatile set of heads.
I think on that point, actually, if you will, just past the standard head, and a point to raise is you can really dial in where you want to put that weight. Although it's a movable weight, you can move it into any position. There's no determined position for that weight. So again, it's like you say yourself, it's really dialing in where that player wants to fill that weight. Where do they need it to be potentially to help any shot correction? If it's a little bit, then we can move the weight a little bit. There's no predetermined amount that you have to move it. So the differences with Sub-Zero obviously is the loft option. There isn't going to be that higher loft option, but potentially we are going to be looking at some stronger golfers wanting to go into this. I would foresee actually if we go into the 10.5 head, and as you've alluded to there in the OptiFit, we can add 2 degrees of loft to that. So essentially we could have a very low spin driver at 12.5 degrees of loft, which is plenty of loft, with the weight in that back position, have a very forgiving, very easy to use low spin driver.
I think the Sub-Zero is about 4 or 5 grams heavier than the standard Epic.
Got a question from Irene Whelan saying, as a 22 handicapper, how would this assist me?
For the standard head or the Sub-Zero head?
For the standard head.
I would say from a fit point of view, it's the fact that there's the amount of weight moved within the head because of all the composite technology in there. They're able to take a lot of weight away from the top and the central position and put it front and back, so the front weight keeps the spin down, the back weight gives you stability off centre. So it actually, as a head, something like the standard Epic in particular, it's not necessarily a head that's solely aimed at, from a fitting point of view, solely aimed at the high-speed player, because it genuinely gives a lot of stability. So whereas in the past you've had to make the decision between do you go low spin or do you go forgiving, whereas where we're getting to now with these heads, some of the other brands as well, where the technologies are really developing now, is you can have the best of both. There isn't necessarily a head that is solely aimed at Tour Pro speed. Once you dial in with the use of launch wonders, you can dial in the launch and the spin to make the most of any player's speed. It's just a question of how forgiving and where that spin profile sits. So I think that the fact that there's more weight being spread within the head makes it relevant to most golfers. And so that's me coming from a totally independent standpoint. It's a very versatile setup.
Yeah, I think just to make a point on that as well is, you know, the importance of that as a message from my perspective outwards is you're not going to know what the differences are, what the challenges are, maybe on one head or another, until you come and see the guys that have the knowledge and have the backup of the product and the support and the systems that they're using down in here, like TrackMan or FlightScope, whatever it may be, to really understand those figures and to understand those numbers, to maximise what it is that you do, or maybe even in some cases don't do, and try and get you to where you need to be to make sure that those golf clubs are working as best as they can for you. But you know, the emphasis there is, you know, speak to someone about it, come and have a fitting with the guys down here.
Yeah, one of the things that actually all across the board in industry now with driver technology is being talked about, that one of the major words now is forgiveness. It's not just low spin, it's not just distance. I think, you know, within the constraints of the laws that are set out, how you test the face, how you test forgiveness, how you test twisting, it's actually now performance across the whole club, and that literally benefits every single player out there. For the tour guys, it lets them hit it harder and not lose performance across the face, which is, I think, partly where, in my interpretation, would be part of the increase in some of the tour distances, is because they literally can stand and thrash at it more than they've ever been able to before. But for your average club player, it just means that you're not having to find that centre spot on the head quite as exactly. So it literally is relevant to no matter what standard.
Hope that, is it Irene, sorry? I hope that answers your question, Irene. So if we move now obviously away from the drivers, we've also got some fairway woods to show you. So there's the two lines, just as there is in the driver, and we're going to look at those very quickly. So the biggest thing that we're doing for the fairway wood for this year is the introduction of the triaxial carbon crown. And again, that's making the MOI, or allowing us to play around with CG positionings in the head to really explore that MOI number. So we're seeing an improvement of 11% in the MOI number over last year's Great Big Bertha. We've, you know, looked at also improving our face cup technology, and that is now into its 4th generation, and we're looking at trying to improve the way that the golf club behaves, as you've just alluded to, in off-centre hits as well as centred hits.
So face cups, the thickness of the face and how it's shaped.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, with the Big Bertha line, as you'll see and as you'll be familiar to, we do have the adjustability in the hosel there, as well as many loft options, as we will see there. So we're going to do this in a 3+, which is 14 degrees, so a strong freewood, which is then adjustable down to 13, and right the way through to a heavenwood or even a 9-wood. So, you know, plenty of options in terms of lofts, really making sure that the guys can dial in those numbers and find those gappings for you.
Yeah, because you'll be able to get actually to the same loft, but with two different heads, depending on whether you wanted a little more drawbars, i.e. putting loft up, or taking it down and opening the face up.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, there's the Sub-Zero to match in with that family range. So again, looking at the use of the triaxial carbon, but in this case we've now got adjustability in the weights to really try and control launch parameters and spin parameters, and really dial in those numbers to make sure the player's getting what they want.
And actually, what's interesting on a much smaller head size than the driver, it's pretty much double the amount of weight moving. So on the fairway it's 22 and 3 grams versus 12 and 2. So it's a lot of weight moving across that.
Yeah.
A lot of weight.
And what we're seeing from the different positions is anything from 250 upwards in change in launch conditions and spin conditions to again just really dial in those numbers. Not so many loft options available in this head because our thoughts and our theories will be that most players, when you start adding some loft and actually moving away from that 18 degree, will probably just be suitable going into the Epic head itself rather than the Sub-Zero. You can see that one. And that's us done. That's a little sneak peek of what's to come.
So essentially with the product overall, and so it's something which there's a real progression of past products. What we should probably do, unless there are any questions that are coming through in particular, what we can do is hit a few.
Hit some shots, yeah.
And get a look at, just to give an indication of, granted it'll be me hitting, so it won't be exactly the same change that everyone's going to see, but between the two different fairway and driver heads, just to give an indication of where the base data changes. Yeah. So it'll be with my own shaft setup, so it'll be completely controlled data. So I'll put a club together.
So, do you are getting on a bit? Do you need to warm up?
Yeah. I'm only a mid-amateur. So I'll start with the fairways.
So would you explain what you're putting together?
So basically what I'm putting together is, with each head, this is the exact same shaft that I use in my own personal equipment. So it gives us the best quality data that we can get rather than using a random shaft. So this is suited to me, so in principle I should be able to hit it relatively solidly. But also it ensures that we get a representative performance from the head itself. So if the shaft is wrong and I'm not delivering the head correctly, then it will give some slightly spurious data. So initially we're going to start with, we'll go with the fairways. I'll hit the standard Epic head first, and then we'll move to the Sub-Zero. I'll put the data up on the screen. So it'll show the actual launch and spin numbers. So let's just click on that.
How many people is Simon testing himself in front of now?
Thankfully I don't know.
Pressure on the team.
It'll also actually, what will be interesting is give an indication of the sound of the heads, because that's something that it has a major impact on feel.
Absolutely.
Matt, what are the options like in left hand as well? Thierry Medina has asked.
So left-hand options do split around a little bit, depending on what head choice they go for. Most head options are available left-hand, but they're more than likely going to be custom options as well.
So what is, I'll get a couple of shots initially. So what I'd be expecting to see out of the standard Epic versus the Sub-Zero is a little bit more spin, perhaps a little bit more launch, in principle a little bit more launch as well.
Glad it's you hitting the shots, not me then.
I'll literally only do a couple because people do not just want to see me practicing.
So all we're doing here is now just changing away from the standard head into the Sub-Zero head.
Sub-Zero, yeah.
So this is the one where we've got the changeability in there for you, Simon, to really dial in the numbers in terms of what you want to see from a launch perspective, but also from a spin perspective.
So generally speaking, out of the standard Epic head, I'm getting a launch angle of about 12.5 degrees and a spin of about 3,500 revolutions, so give or take a couple of hundred revolutions variability based on me swinging. So be looking for this one to produce a little bit of potentially a little bit of a lower launch angle, but certainly I'd expect a slightly lower spin. Not that the camera can see it, but visibly where it's hitting into the net here, it's visibly a lower launch. So that was a little bit off centre, so it's still spun, but the launch angle straight away came down a degree. So I don't know how audible it is, but it's a very different note off the club head. So that one, launch angle at 11, spin at 3,059 revolutions. So that's quite a strong flight. Certainly for a 3-wood flight, we wouldn't really be looking at going much lower than that, but it's a noticeably lower launch angle off of it. And so there's no manipulation of the data here, it is literally live capturing. So I'll switch over to the driver.
I think the nice one from my perspective standing here is one to really note to the guys is actually that smash factor number. And seeing that starting to increase beyond 1.5 is showing how well that golf club's actually working for you. Granted, it was on that particular hit, but I would say you probably felt like that was actually a really strong hit.
It was, yeah, and I'm naturally more suited to, I've always hit a high ball and high spin, so for my game the Sub-Zero would certainly be the head I'd be more inclined to go towards, simply because the weight at the front, just helps to keep the spin down. It feels a little bit more solid as well, so that's something I've always liked. Just going to collect the balls very quickly.
Did you want to explain that smash factor number there, Simon, for anyone that's maybe questioned that if they're unsure what does that actually mean
So
to the guys?
The smash factor is literally it's a conversion ratio. It's a number that we use to gauge partly quality of strike, but also efficiency of energy transfer. So smash factor is efficiency. It's a conversion of club speed to ball speed. So that ball speed of 155 miles an hour is 1.52 times the club speed. So it's something that is a general indication of how well suited, like how good the strike is, but also potentially how well suited the equipment is working. So we're always looking for there's a limit on what's achievable from any club from a legality point of view within that, but we're trying to push that as high as possible on the woods. I'm just going to switch that setting over to the driver.
So what's your driver shaft spec?
Shaft spec for me is the Oban Kyoshi Black. It's the 65 denotion, but the dead weight's 72 grams.
Why is that suitable for you?
Partly it's tip weighted, so I'm very right-handed. I've got a lot of right hand in my action, so I need a balance that's near the club head end, which helps to stop me flipping it left. But also the shaft is structurally very stable through the bottom end. So again, like with the Fairway wood head, where I need a lower spinning model on the head, I generally need a lower spinning, lower launching model on the shaft as well. I've always struggled hitting it too high. So for me, with my equipment, it's always generally about getting the flight down. So with a Fairway wood, it's a different model because the head size is different. So we're looking for a different performance from that shaft. So you need to use the tip of the shaft a little bit more on a Fairway wood. But with the driver, where we're generating more launch, with my game, I need to keep the flight down as much as possible.
First thing how to
Yeah. Little lower on the face. Yeah, so a little lower on the face, so it launches a bit lower than we want, spin a little bit more than we want. That's human error. See if I can get a better strike. It's a better hit. So that one, again, I've always hit a very high golf ball, so the back shot in particular, the spin relative to launch angle is very good. It's generally the flight's a little high, but out of this head where the weight's back, it's generally a slightly higher launching, higher spinning club head than Sub-Zero. We should see a different result. Where the spin relative to launch angle is good, but it's definitely getting it up and out very, very, very easily. The smash is a little low based on where that launch angle is for me, so because we'd be looking generally to get that launch angle down nearer to 12.5, 13 degrees. So it'll be interesting to see moving to the Sub-Zero how that changes it.
So a few people have just joined since you've been hitting. Can you just say what club you have been hitting?
That's the Great Big Earther Epic. in the 9 degree.
And we're now moving position sub-zero 9 degree.
Yeah. So literally exactly the same setting. Exactly the same shaft, so literally the only thing that can change this, other than the variables in my swing, is the club head itself. Change that tab. So again, straight away, the lower flight. Yeah, so very, very good indication of how the two heads differ. Because the launch angle's lower, the efficiency is higher. That's just a function of the flight itself, but it's where that launch and spin sits. So for me, with my game and the higher flight, that's straight away where having the weight further forward and naturally the lower launching characteristics of the head come through straight away in one hit. So yeah, there's a real definite difference between the two heads. I'll do one more just to get a good average.
How long would you guys anticipate a driver fitting lasting?
It can be anything from half an hour to an hour and a half. I think sometimes it can be a very simple, you have to pick the right option pretty much straight out the gate. From a shaft point of view, it's initially getting the shaft and the balance right, so you get a true performance from the club head. Once you get that, then you can really dial it in quite quickly. But player to player, swing to swing, it can vary. Probably on average, it's about an hour on average. Yeah. But then you've got 160 driver shafts to fit with. Really zoning in on balance point, then profile, dead weight, you really can zone in on it. So it would take, in some respects, the more options you have, the longer it can take because you've got more you can test with. So. A little necky, but we're still getting, that was a slightly iffy strike, so we're still getting that lower launch angle and the spin rate a little lower. So there's a real, if I go into some of the averages, we had a few shots earlier on as well, but you can see between the driver data with the standard Epic versus the Sub-Zero, there's about a degree launch angle difference and about 20% on spin, which is is a pretty sizable difference. And slightly less difference on the fairway woods, just over half a degree difference on the launch angle and about 10 to 15% on spin, but a very noticeable change between the two models. So, yeah.
The interesting one from standing back here, so I'm the one that's sort of sticking out from my perspective there is actually with the Sub-Zero model, the average swing speed was down, but the ball speed and the launch characteristics, because as you just alluded to, there are more in tune with what you're used to seeing and more in tune with where you want them to be. The ball speed's actually gone up.
Yeah.
So with those swings, I would say from a fitting point of view, although you're maybe not trying to swing it slower, but you're actually swinging it maybe better and under more control and getting more from it.
Yeah, the timing's stronger. Yeah. So that's the sad truth of age. Yeah, so a good demonstration. So literally, you can see a really clear difference between them, and again, that helps from a fitting point of view. The fact that there is a clear difference between them, and again, through using the weighting on the head, using the hosel settings, you can comfortably get between those settings using those.
I think just going back to what we said then when I was off camera, this is Simon doing this in 4 or 5 minutes, and exploring differences. If these guys are going to be prepared to spend, an hour to an hour and a half with you guys, you can really start to explore those differences dial in those numbers and make sure that you can see results potentially similar to that, or maybe even better. I think I'm all out of there if we're done there.
Any other questions coming through?
Are you able to disclose off-the-shelf pricing? Obviously, equipment from us will be slightly more because it may involve an aftermarket shaft, but is pricing...
Retail at present we're looking at 469, but I suspect that will probably change.
That's for both models?
Both models of the driver, yeah. So it's going to be an expensive driver, but with all of the technologies that we've included over the years has really helped us deliver what we think is going to be the strongest product out there.
Right, well that concludes our first broadcast. We very much hope you enjoyed it. This video will be posted on our Facebook page for those who weren't able to watch live. Please follow our page if you're not already doing so, and you'll be notified when we broadcast more Facebook Live events throughout the year. But lastly, big thank you to Matt James from Callaway Golf and Callaway Golf themselves for supporting us on this presentation. It really was epic. Definitely sorry. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching, guys.